Alright, so as you all know, I have been working on mods in my spare time for 7 Days to Die, and this is the big mod that I've been working on over the past week and a bit now, and it's probably only 25% done in total, but the hard part of the mod is actually done. It just comes down to actually filling out a lot of the content of the mod. But I think a lot of you will be quite happy to see the proof of concept I have working already. So let's get a little test going here. Well, let's start off with bashing these Arlenes with a club here. And as you'll see at the bottom there, I have increased my blunt weapons. Well, that has a lot of swing on it. So yeah, I have basic learn by doing working. So let's kill some of these Arlenes real quick. That is just for blunt weapons so far, but all of these tools here and weapons have their functionality added to the game. So let's take a look at the skills tab. First we have the combat skills tab, which has two sections, melee and ranged. You'll see blunt, blade, pierce, archery, pistols, shotguns, rifles, and automatic rifles. Blunt weapons is clubs, fists, sledgehammers, claw hammers, salvaging tools, and your bare hands. Blades are knives and axes. Piercing weapons are shovels, pickaxes, and of course spears. Archery, pistols, shotguns, rifles, and automatic rifles, I'm sure you'll figure out yourself. All of these are fully functional. If you attack enemies with these weapons, they will level up your skills. I have my numbers kind of tentatively in place for the XP. It could very much change, but right now the first level takes about 10 hits to level up, so if we just jab Arlene a few times here. There we go, we've upgraded blade. Do the same with spears. There we go, that's working fine. We've got bows working as well. Here we go. We also have pistols working. As well, of course, as shotguns. Nope, we got a normal level there. You'll notice we got 5 skill points, and that's because with the learn by doing system you will need a lot more skill points, but you also just make the perks cost more, and you know, there you go, you're good to go. So that is normal to get 5 skill points. There we go, shotguns are increased. Automatic rifles are ready to go as well. That one leveled up very quickly, obviously, because it's an automatic rifle. And regular rifles too. There we go, rifles are increased. I think that's all the core weapons done. They all function perfectly well. That's all the combat skills. And basically what the combat skills themselves directly do is just increase your damage, and in weapon cases it's stuff like accuracy and fire rate. The real key to a learn by doing system is actually that these are mostly just gates to perks. So the actual effects aren't all that important. They're going to be what limits you to get the really good stuff like perks. Let's take a look at the next tab, which is utility skills. And these 3 at the bottom here I have not fixed the localization for, but I'm sure you can figure out what they are from their names: mining, salvaging, and scavenging. This first one, speech, is the only skill I have that doesn't fully function on its own in this mod right now, and that is because I made it with a particular function in mind that the Fun Pimps have in the game that turns out when you try and use it, it's actually a dead function and doesn't do anything. So speech doesn't learn by doing right now, but I have solutions for that already implemented into the mod, but also it's easy to fix. You just need to make a script. I just don't know how to do that right now, but it's definitely something on my to-do list to learn. So speech isn't learn by doing right now, but what it does is give you better deals at the trader. Science gives you faster chemical crafting. Right now the main science boosting thing is actually eating, or using I should say, any kind of medical item, and I've got a recog here because it's one of the easier ones to trigger because you don't need to lose health, and it also works with using it on other players. Now you'll notice on the left there I have a 1000 hour buff. That is because the Iron Gut perk from the base game is not connected to anything currently, and that's what happens when that happens, so don't worry about that. It's nothing I've done to recog, I just need to re-enable one of the perks. There we go, we ate 4 of those and we increased our science. Science is meant to be a broad sort of like medicine, electronics, chemistry, all that kind of thing, and the main thing the actual skill does directly is just increase your chemical crafting, but it's really meant to be a gateway for crafting skills, which we'll get to in a little bit, because this mod has no learn by doing crafting skills because they were an absolute nightmare in like alpha 15. It doesn't mean that we don't have something good as well though. We're using the alpha 16.4 model, which doesn't have learn by doing crafting skills, but your crafting skills are still gated by learn by doing. You just won't be making 100 shovels, for example. The next one is engineering, and this one governs your crafting in your inventory, workbench, and cement mixer, but again, the main thing it's going to do is gate your access to certain skills that are going to be useful to your playthrough, like making a crucible, for example. And that one's primarily leveled up by building. So if we place a few blocks here, there we go, engineering increased. The reason I'm not calling it construction tools anymore, by the way, is because construction tools in Alpha 16 kind of stopped meaning anything, and it became basically leveled just like this. So I thought a name change would make it a bit more clear that it isn't meant to be sort of like the blunt weapons or the blade weapons or something. I've tried to take the word tools out of a lot of the skill names to avoid confusion. So that's one of the ways you can level up your engineering, and that's the primary way. We'll get to the other ones in a little bit. That's going to gate your access to things like crucibles and workbenches. So yeah, you're going to base build to get better workstations and stuff. But there is a solution for the more nomadic player, don't worry. The next one we have here is armor, and there's a lot of dev notes on armor because armor is one of those skills where if you take it out of the game, everything goes to shit, and you can't simply have armor rating and stamina stuff governed by a perk. It's handled by a very complicated system in the buffs tree. So right now, the only thing the armor skill does is reduce your degradation use, but this would be your gateway to the armor perks, which would work pretty much as in vanilla, as well as your armor crafting. And you gain XP with this one by, as I'm sure you can probably imagine, taking damage while wearing at least one piece of armor. And you might be wondering about like heavy armor, medium armor, or like light armor. Those are going to be perks. The main skill is just going to be one type of armor. Now we did get a level up there. You won't be able to see it because I've got all these other buffs stacking, but it happened. We just do a quick, there we go, see it at the bottom there. Be gone, Arlene. So if we take a look at my skills, you'll see I leveled up twice there. Just getting the shit kicked out of me. Now don't worry, there is an XP curve in this mod, so getting to level 2 is a lot harder than it is from getting to level 99 to 100. So if you're like, hey, that's really fast how quickly you leveled that up, don't worry, it slows down. Yeah, there's armor. What else do we have? Athletics, that one's pretty obvious. You jump, you run, you crouch, run, you swim, and it goes up. I'm just doing jumping because it's like the quickest way to do it. There we go. It eventually activated there. And athletics, of course, gives you similar effects to Rule 1 cardio, but like a weaker version, and it gives you a little bit of base stamina as well. Athletics is another one like engineering and science, where the main thing though is going to be limiting your access to other perks. Things like sexual tyrannosaurus and parkour are going to be limited behind athletics. So the actual effect of the skill is kind of irrelevant in this case, but it does have an effect. Next one here is survivalism, and this is the one I was most annoyed about by the Fun Pimp's decision to make a bunch of functions that don't do anything, because I was going to have it be based on your ability to skin animals, but that functionality is not in the game yet, so I'll have to script my own version of it. And harvesting plants as well was going to be the other one, but again, that functionality somehow isn't in the game. So what we're doing in the meantime is just using eating food and drinking water as your primary means of raising your survivalism skill. The scripts to get the other stuff working shouldn't be particularly difficult. It's just something I'm not prioritizing right now over getting the rest of the core functionality working. There you can see survivalism is up, and that is another one that's primarily going to be limiting other crafting skills, but it does give you food and water reduction. Next one we have here are mining, salvaging, and scavenging. We grab ourselves a pickaxe and find some rocks or something. Here we go, that one's leveled. And salvaging works exactly the same, but you're primarily going to use it on things like cars, for example. There we go, salvaging is increased. And the last one is scavenging, which is looting. And you gain XP from that by looting containers. So I'm going to go loot a few and then get back to you when it actually levels up. There we go, scavenging is increased by looting. And I just showed you all of those manually so that you can see that there's no smoke and mirrors. All of the skills that I said do work. The only one that doesn't is the speech skill, and that is a temporary setback due to some fuckery, basically. But I did mention that there was other ways for you to level your skills. If, for example, you don't want to do base building to level your engineering, if you're more of a nomadic player like me, that sounds absolutely boring. And indeed, if you want like a head start for your science and stuff, you can just invest skill points. You'll get 5 skill points per level, which you can invest in skills if you would like. It's more optimal with a limited amount of skill points to spend those on perks, because I will be removing the forgetting elixir for this mod because it completely goes against the point of it. If you can just reset everything back to 1, refund all the amount of time you spent leveling all your skills, and then just invest them in what you want. It literally is just the antithesis of the mechanic. So the forgetting elixir has to be gone for this whole system to function correctly. So we won't have that. But yeah, you will have less levels as well, probably, just because I'm mean like that. But I have a solution that I think people will like regardless. But if you're desperate, you can spend skill points to level up your thing. And it's 1 level up will get you 5 points of a skill, so it's not too terribly difficult to beeline towards something if you really want it. You just have to remember that you'll never get those skill points back in this mod. So if you want to rush straight for like 50 engineering, you're not going to get those 10 levels back, and you're going to be set back quite a bit on your perks, but you can do that if you want. But there is another way to increase your skills that is loot centric, and that is the learn by reading system. Yes, my mortal enemy remains because I found a way to make it not shit, and that is basically it's going to be a lot less RNG based by the time I implement it fully into this mod. It'll be less of a, what do I get in here? How do I, adjust the spawn rates of this book? Or, you know how you have to like use lockpicking and not go over 15 to keep it for workstations, and you have to be careful not to put points into the wrong thing, otherwise you dilute your loot tables and shit. That simply isn't going to be a thing, because I'm going to rework the loot tables in such a way that it'll be like, oh, there's a working Sif Tools crate that will have a book for me that I need, rather than all the RNG bullshit. But there will also be less ability to control how they spawn, because your control will come from you using your brain and going to a place where you would find one, rather than it just being RNG. And the solution is quite simple. I've just reused the skill magazines to increase your base skills. So for example, if we read an armored up here, we get a point of armor. Now, they'll be a lot less frequent than in the vanilla game, of course, otherwise you'd be done with the game in the first week. But they will be much easier to predict in their spawning patterns, meaning that the nomadic player can search out these and use them to their advantage, especially in things like engineering, where it's a very base-centric skill. If you want, you can go and hunt down yourself some Forge Aheads, and of course, in my infinite wisdom, setting all this up, I forgot to give myself Forge Aheads, but those work quite easily. And a couple of concerns I had about these skills as I was making them, by the way, and I'll let you in on some development secrets here. It was a bit of a pain in the ass to make a system that had an XP curve that worked not just with how you learn by doing, but I had to make sure that leveling up the skills like this also updated the XP curve, and also had to make sure that reading the skill books did update the skill curve as well, and that would ensure that it takes the same amount of XP to get from level 1 to 100, regardless of if you do it with books or if you do it with a different combination of books and skill points and learn by doing. It all just comes out to the same curve every time. So level 99 will always be the same amount of XP to get to level 100. But of course, if you're level 99, you can just spend a skill book to get to 100, and that does mean that a skill book is much better used later in the game than early on, and I'm kind of just comfortable with players making that decision, because there are advantages to getting things earlier, and there are advantages to having these books to skip the grindiest parts of the learn by doing system. That's a choice that's in your hands. I don't really care which one you want to go for. I just care that it functions, and it does it mostly intuitively, so you'll always have the same amount of XP on every level So, you know, level 100 will always be like 1800 XP or whatever it is, regardless of how you get there. Additionally, there will have to be a few new skill books because not everything is covered by the vanilla game. You'll see I've made 2 already. The Business Secrets magazine will be your primary way of leveling up your speech skill before I implement the scripts that allow you to learn by doing with speech. So this will still be a non-skill point way to develop your barter skills. So you could find like 20 of these, you know, and read them all like that, and then you could spend some skill points on that, and then there you go. You can still level speech in this mod, it's just it needs some heavy lifting in the background to actually make it learn by doing, because I was tricked by the game. But it's fine, it still functions. Additionally, we have Health Nut magazine here, which I've just made both of these new magazines in Photoshop, by the way. They're probably not the final version, but they kind of fit, they work well enough. They don't look too terribly out of place. And they're not AI generated or anything, I just found like copyright free images and then like implanted them onto the base shape of the skill magazines. Fun fact, did you know that every single skill magazine in the game has this weird shape where it's like straight and then there's like a little crumple at the edge? Except for the rifles book. The rifles book doesn't have it for some reason. Yes, that's the level of insanity I have devolved into, is knowing things like that now. I've gone completely insane. So that's all of the learn by doing skills, and all of them function except for the speech skill, which can only be leveled through skill points in books right now. But we do have some other stuff to show. Now, there's no perks linked into this yet. It'll be very, very easy to just copy and paste the vanilla game's perks in and adjust their settings for how I would want to balance them with this, and it would be very, very easy to make my own new perks. I just haven't done it yet because, well, it's probably the easiest part, it's probably the most time consuming part, because I'm gonna have hundreds of perks probably, and yeah, it's just gonna take a lot of data entry work, basically. We have a couple of perks in here because the game needs them to even function. Like Physician is directly tied to like the core functionality of health in this game, so if you take it out, the whole game falls to pieces. Ignore this side thing. It's because the way Physician works is not actually via the perks, it's through buffs in the background. When you try and display what it actually does, it just shows you an XP game. And we have Healing Factor, Parkour, and Living Off the Land. Again, because you will get fatal errors if you remove Living Off the Land from the game, because there's a block they forgot to remove a reference to it from, so the game will always give you a red error if you try and take out Living Off the Land. What a video game. And parkour is needed for broken legs to function. This game is held together with duct tape, it's horrifying, and Healing Factor is required for injuries timers to be functional, and you're seeing the extremely lengthy buff timers because I haven't put Iron Gut back in. Iron Gut is another perk that is fundamental to the functioning of this game. I am deeply unnerved by the things I've discovered about this game while modding it. But let's head over to the crafting perks. And you will notice there's 2 crafting tabs right now. That is because if I remove this before I remove all the references to it, you guessed it, the game will shit the bed. So this is temporarily in here until I get rid of all the non-used skill magazines, and then I'll just yank it out once it's no longer needed. What we have is the crafting perks menu, and you'll notice that my perks take 5 points to unlock. That isn't 5 levels, that's just 1 level. And you'll notice in some cases that it'll cost 2 levels worth of perks to unlock things, and in some cases it'll even cost less than a level's worth of perk points to get things. It was a fun thing we had back in the day, so I added it back in. Sometimes things aren't worth the same amount. Being able to craft 9mm ammo, not as worthwhile as being able to craft a steel club, for example. So what we have here is a lengthy crafting menu, which is based entirely on your learn by doing. Primarily, I would say on your main combat skills, engineering, and science, because that just makes sense. We have advanced crafting here as the first one. It's based entirely on your engineering skill, and it'll unlock things like workbenches, cement mixers, shit like that. We have science crafting, which is going to be your medicine, your chemistry stations, drugs, things like that. Then we have blacksmithing. This is going to be your primary leveling thing for any kind of melee weapon or tool. it's going to govern essentially the quality of the item that you can craft, regardless of if it's a blunt weapon, a blade weapon, a pierce weapon, a mining weapon, because I thought having individual ones for each of that would just be so cluttered and annoying that it was best to just have like one weapon and tool forging skill, and then you have these specific ones to unlock unique things. So this will give you like the ability to craft forge, and then the bellows, and then the anvil, then the crucible, but it'll also give you the ability to craft level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, level 6 melee tools and weapons. I may switch over to a 600 level system so I can add item degradation back in, but the rough idea would be the same. It would be the same intervals of like 200 to 600 on this chart here. And these ones which all have like 1 rank, this would be your means of forcing your game to give you a steel club once you've reached level 50 in blunt weapons. If you unlock this, you'll unlock the steel club, steel sledgehammer, steel knuckles. I think that's it, unless I'm missing a blunt weapon. Regardless, you'll unlock all 3 of those with 2 levels worth of skill points, assuming you have 50 blunt, and your quality will be determined by your blacksmithing, so you need to be good at engineering and be good with your core weapon, and then blade will do the same. That'll give you a machete, pierce will give you a spear, mining will give you the steel axe, the steel pickaxe, and the second level will give you the chainsaw and the auger, and then indeed here we have the ratchet and the impact driver. All iron tier weapons are simply going to be unlocked by default and locked behind you having a forge. I'm also potentially thinking of going back to when we had to craft them on the workbench, so there's more of a limiting factor in that sense rather than having to find recipes for them, because I find it mostly annoying. Because why would you even build a forge if you didn't have ideas on what you were going to make at the forge? Were you just planning on shitting out ingots? Probably not. I think we'll be just fine with limiting your ability to craft the good gear behind your availability of the good crafting stations. So yeah, that's all your melee weapons and tools sort of governed by this section here. Then we have the ranged one. We have bow crafting, which is going to be hybrid. It's both going to give you quality for your bows and crossbows, but it's also going to unlock the bows and crossbows throughout it. And you will notice in this mod in particular, I have no particular affection for the game's ideas of equality of weapons. And what I mean by that is the vanilla game will tell you that a wooden bow is the same like value to you as a level 1 pistol, and that's the same value to you as a level 1 AK, and that just isn't the case. Obviously the 30 round magazine assault rifle is the better weapon out of those, and that is reflected in the ability to craft them. You will be able to craft bows at a lower tech level than you would need if you were going to go for guns. So if you don't want to go very deep into engineering, bows are going to be an obvious choice for that because they are bows. And you can see here at the max level you would only need engineering 40, and that would be to use level 6 crossbows and compound bows. But you would need level 100 archery, of course. Gunsmithing is much more technically demanding, requiring eventually 100 advanced engineering to be able to unlock the level 6 tier of weapons, and gunsmithing works like blacksmithing but for guns, essentially. It governs your ability to craft all of the guns, and then if we scroll down, you have the specific ability to craft each of the unique kinds of guns. So you would unlock the pistol with this, the magnum with this, and then the SMG and vulture with this. The pistol is available at a lower pistols level than the AK is available in its tree. So even if you're playing with machine guns, you are going to have a harder time crafting a machine gun than a pistols player would, because it's an obviously more complicated piece of equipment. Same goes with rifles, with those being a 15 and shotguns also being a 15. The double barrel shotgun, hunting rifle and pistol are pretty weak compared to the AK, so they're easier to obtain. Like I said, I don't subscribe to the sort of RPG style false equality of all the weapons in the game. It's just true that some of them are less powerful and are lower tech, and therefore should be more easily accessed technologically speaking. And indeed, you'll notice the magnum is unlocked at pistols 30, the shotgun goes all the way up to shotguns 50, and then the lever action rifle is back down to 30 rifles because it's a pretty low tech weapon. And then the tactical assault rifle pretty high tech 60 rifles is required. And then to get your M60, you'll need 85. To get your sniper rifle, you'll need 75. To get your shotgun, you'll need 75. And to get your SMG and stuff, you will need 75. For the most part, the tier 3 guns are a bit more equal across the playing field, so they are a bit more similar in their unlocking abilities. I hope that doesn't sound too complicated. Basically what it means is better weapons are harder to get, even if you're spec towards that weapon, because they just require more technological understanding to create those weapons. And indeed, bows are an inherently low-tech weapon, so they require a lower level of engineering. Now, we have the ammo crafting tab here, and then there's actually quite a lot of ranks for these. I intend to limit your ability to craft ammo so that the game is harder in my mod, so you would have to invest a very small amount of skill points to even craft the basic amount of ammo. And indeed, you'll notice that some are available to me and some aren't. That is because, again, scaling relatively with the size or complexity of the bullet is the availability. So for 9mm bullets, you only need an engineering of like 5 to be able to make them, but 44 requires like 10. And then shells require 15, 7.62 requires 25, and arrows are of course very low tech, just requiring archery for a while. As you scale through these, you will notice that they become more complicated, but you will only ever need 50 engineering to bulk craft 9mm, and that's why there's multiple ranks of these. I intend to remove the ammo crafting thing from the skill books and give the skill books more interesting effects rather than just you unlocked HP ammo, woohoo. Now you can choose if you want to unlock those with perk points. It only costs like a level and a 1/7 of a level to max out one bullet, so you're not going to miss those too much. And I guess the quote-unquote better bullets are harder to obtain to bulk craft. 7.62, for example, to enable you to feed your M60, which is objectively going to be the best killing weapon for killing zombies in a game that makes sense and isn't so heavily RPG based. You're going to need to max out your engineering to do that, but you're not going to need to do that to bulk craft the smaller bullet types like the 9mm. And indeed, arrows are quite an interesting one. I plan on letting you like bulk craft your stone arrows like quite early on, and then steel arrows, and then you can bulk craft your steel arrows, and then you get access to fire arrows and explosive arrows, but it requires science now rather than engineering, and then you can bulk craft your arrows with the max rank of that, and it requires a good bit of science to be able to make explosive arrows very efficiently. Everything makes sense there. We have a few more perks to go over here. Armor crafting, very simple. It will work like the vanilla game because it's probably going to require a full overhaul to really fix that. So basically, you get the first rank, you unlock level 2 all the armors, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6. It's dumb. I don't like that system, but because I don't have the ability to make new armors and stuff, because I just don't know how to do that yet, it's just how it's going to work for now. It's good enough. It's better than the vanilla game is anyway. We have cooking. An interesting thing to note about cooking in my mod is you will be a bit less stupid. You won't need cooking to be able to do like basic food. So the cooking magazines will be more leaning towards the later game food items, so you could definitely go an entire playthrough without investing in cooking at all, just living off of like bacon and eggs if you wanted, but you will have full control over that. And the final rank requires science as well as survivalism, because it's going to be for Grandpa's moonshine, and it makes sense you would need to be a little bit scientific to make alcohol like that. We have vehicle crafting here. The first rank is just going to require 5 engineering and get your bicycle very quickly, and then you start requiring pretty decent engineering and science levels with 25-10 for the mini bike, 50-20 for the motorcycle, 75-40 for the 4x4, and eventually to make the gyrocopter you're going to need maxed out engineering and 80 science, because you would need to be pretty good at both of those things to make a flying vehicle out of scrap. Then we have another page here which is just for robotics crafting and explosives crafting. These aren't learn by doing skills because they have issues with the server for learn by doing. Basically they're not really you, so it's hard to make the XP related to the skills go back to you with the way learn by doing is usually done. It's not impossible, there are mods that do it, but I don't want to integrate those mods like that anyway. So instead, robotics and explosives are going to be perk based rather than learn by doing, and they're going to be governed by science and engineering, which makes perfect sense. There's no real skill to throwing explosives, it's just a throw. There wouldn't be any way to like do more damage with it or be more accurate with it. It's a bomb, you throw it. And indeed, how would you be able to develop your skills with a robotic thing? You put it down and the robot does it. so you wouldn't be developing skills that way. But I didn't want to cut off the playstyles. Oh, and I forgot to mention, batons are part of blunt weapons, obviously. If you want the stun baton, you'll come to robotics and get the first rank, which requires 10 science, 10 engineering. Yeah, that's the crafting system. There's no real cheese to it, but it's not annoying either. You just level up basically whatever your combat skills are, and then survivalism, armor, engineering, and science are going to be the main ones you're probably going to need. And then it just becomes a game of managing your skill points, because you'll have a lot of things you want in here, and you have to choose basically. So yeah, that is how my learn by doing mod is going to work. I obviously need to put in a bunch of perks and stuff. Yeah, it's going along nicely. The hardest part is over, and now it's just going to be time consuming to implement all the perks and do a bunch of bug testing. This mod is not available yet, but I thought I would put it out early so you guys can see it, give feedback, stuff like that. And I do kind of anticipate as well that there's probably going to be a bit of a period where this mod comes out and then everybody gets their shit pushed in by like charged zombies and stuff, because I'm probably not going to have balanced for them very well, considering that they were added in 2.0 alongside a bunch of perks that made you stronger. I do have a plan for that, but I'm gonna see how the core functionality works first and worry about that later, because in my ideal 7 Days to Die, there won't be bright blue zombies or bright orange zombies that are magically really strong and punch you in the face and kill you in 2 hits and take 4,000 bullets to kill. It would just be fun instead. So yeah, there's a breakdown of what I've spent the last week doing, and it's going very well. It's just going to be a case of filling out all of these perks, which isn't going to present a problem, it's just going to take time. If you're interested in seeing my other mods, why not check out this playthrough where I'm playtesting the other 4 mods I've made. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.